So today we are focusing on one person, someone who's worked on both sides of the aisle, from supporting entrepreneurs to now deciding to take a leap fully into developing her own startup. Usha Srinivasan is an ecosystem builder, and she's worked in economic development for 15 years, supporting startup entrepreneurs in program development through Mars, through Elevate, and most recently, Brampton Venture Zone. Welcome to Tech Uncensored, everyone. My name is Hessie Jones. And today we're going to talk to Usha Srinivasan. She's always been a builder, and she has leveraged her network to chart a path for many founders and develop very pertinent programs to bring these founders to the next level. Along the way, in her own words, she has run side hustle projects, passion projects, from her own consulting business to managing a small reggae record label. I want to hear more about that, to running a bakery business in Toronto, in the beaches in Toronto. So now Usha has decided to become a full-fledged startup founder for a talent platform called Be Ready, to support in one of her passions, the underutilization of immigrant and BIPoC talent in Ontario, and specifically trying to connect them to small, medium enterprises as well as startups. So this conversation is about Usha's path from economic development to entrepreneurship. So welcome, Usha.
Hi there, Hessie.
All right. So you are now wearing a startup hat.
Yes, I am.
But I want the audience to know a little bit about your journey, and when you even just started working on the corporate side. Did you ever envision, do you think at that time, that you'd ever be in this seat?
Oh, far from it. Far from it. So I have a science background. I started my career as a academic, I'm a clean tech scientist by training. So for sure, did not expect myself to be in the entrepreneur seat. For sure, not.
Okay, so tell me, so you said you're a scientist, so clean tech. What did you want? What did you aspire to be when you came out of school?
To be honest, I think my parents wanted me to be a doctor, and I did not want to pursue that. My father was a pediatrician, so eventually research was something. The second best was being a PhD doctor rather than a physician doctor. So that's what I became. But I love research. I think all researchers have that sense of curiosity and discovery, and so being in the lab and working on more actionable science was, something I really enjoyed, and I thought I would be a professor, eventually teaching at a university, which I still love teaching. So that would have been my path if I had not pivoted.
So when did you make the transition to Mars? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so I went from academic research to market research. So I went to a company called Frost & Sullivan for about 8 years, where I led their building and environmental technologies practice for North America. And how I ended up at Mars is quite by accident. I was working for a US company, traveling a lot to the US and working with large companies like GE and IBM, etc. But I realized my own market in Ontario was kind of underserved, because we used to have a lot of startups come to Frost & Sullivan looking for market research. And most of the time they couldn't afford the consulting or even the reports that we wrote. So I realized it's like an untapped market, like underserved market in the startup community. And that's how I ended up at Mars. So I kind of approach them and say, hey, I see you work with startups. Literally saying, is there a role for me? Most of my roles, I have kind of found them myself. I haven't applied for a job to date, which is a blessing, I guess. And so they said, yeah, we're trying to establish a market intelligence division for startups, and that's how I ended up at Mars.
So you're the brains behind what is now, I guess, the Mars Intelligence Insights.
That's correct. That's correct.
Amazing. And for many founders who don't know about this, it's fantastic. I think the value is like 20,000 plus for the reports, and you get access to research when it comes to capital insights as well as markets, so you can do your TAM, SAM, SOM, and even lead generation. So it's become incredibly valuable to many founders. So thank you for doing that for them. So in your time at Mars, like besides establishing the research side, what were the other things that you envisioned for your role and what you wanted to provide as value?
To be honest, I was extremely lucky to have gone into Mars at that early stage. I was employee number 25 back in 2008, and Mars was itself a startup. We were still figuring things out, and a lot of we had some funding. We had this building. We had a vision, and amazing committed leaders that I had the lucky fortune of working with, from the CEO Ilsa Tarnick to many others that I was reporting into over those 10-year period. And so it was really an environment where you put your hand up when there's new ideas. There was no dearth of great ideas from different people to say, what else should we be doing to support the entrepreneur community? So I am so grateful for all the amazing things we ended up doing, whether it was the market intelligence services that eventually grew to across Canada, or then the entrepreneurship programming, which used to happen as an in-person programming, which then grew to an online audience. From there, we managed, of course, funding to all the regional innovation centers that many people didn't know that happened from Mars, including to Altitude Accelerator. And that's how I know Pam for many years. But, for myself, I just, learned so much. It was like drinking from the fire hose a lot of times, because I was going outside of my comfort zone of market research to entrepreneurship education and working with startups and managing grants. And I think at some point I had almost close to 100 people in my team, because there were different divisions across venture programs and talent. And so, working in that environment, you exposing yourself to startups every day, day in and day out, that's when you start thinking, hey, maybe should I get into entrepreneurship myself? Is there something I should try? And in my case, lack of a better word, I'm going to say I felt like an imposter still, because here I was developing programs for startups, but I had no idea what it meant to be a founder of a startup. And so that was always in my mind. I think, that was what transitioned me to stop working at Mars and then be a founder myself when I left there.
Okay, so when you left Mars, you went to Elevate, is that right? Or how long before you went to Elevate? What happened?
It was actually an interesting arrangement I had with Elevate CEO Razor Suleiman. He knew that I was leaving to build a startup. I had another business called House Chef. My co-founder was a chef, and we had a home social dining company where people, foodies who like exploring different types of cuisine, would come into a chef's home. It could be a very well-known chef or a home cook. But they were, regardless, coming into somebody's home to have a home social dining experience. That was the business I was going to build. And with Elevate, I had this arrangement that I would work six months of the year so that I could actually build my business the rest of the time. So that was calculated risk. I'm sure, your audience is a mix of entrepreneurs and others. That was a calculated risk, because I was going from a full-time job, still had a family to support, to go into a part-time-ish, and then still pursuing my desire of building a new business.
How old were your kids at that time, and how many kids did you have at the time that you started?
I have two. that was good enough. I have two kids, and they were in high school at that time. They were in high school.
So they didn't need mom full time, but at the
Not
same
really.
time, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you find how much of your life changed significantly when you made that choice
Hmm.
from Mars?
Yeah. This is something, entrepreneurs should know. Entrepreneurship, building a business is not easy. Like you have, especially at the age, it has a different age range, different things are important, right? When you're young, and you're building a business, maybe you don't have that many responsibilities. And yes, you could live in you could live in the mom's basement, not pay rent, and be okay, not have any savings, eat simple food, etc. As you get older, although you might have savings, or be able to financially be able to afford that, you still have higher responsibilities, especially if you have a family and children. So it's really comfort level of what you want, and you don't have life experiences as a young person. So what are you going to build? And then when you have an older stage, you have tons of experience, from lived experience plus work experience, that you can leverage. So I feel like there's a little bit of and there's advantages and disadvantages at different times of your life, right? To when you're building the business. But the life does change a lot. Here you no longer have a 9 to 5. So I chose two really crazy businesses: food tech as an entrepreneur, and events of running, being at Elevate, 20,000 people showing up at event. It is a crazy amount of pace for event business. So yeah, there's very little sleep.
Wow.
in
Now,
those.
were those two things happening concurrently, or were they like 6 months doing this and then 6 months off? Is
They
that
were
how?
kind of happening concurrently. They were kind of
Oh my goodness. Okay.
yeah. But at Elevate, I was wearing multiple hats. Thanks to Razor, I was head of partnerships, managing some recruitment, managing startup open house. So the 3 months leading up to Elevate is very intense, and then the rest of the time, you're keep doing that, because Elevate, as it goes from 10 people to 300 people in a
Absolutely.
short period of time, with both full-time employees and all the volunteers. So it was quite something to watch some of the amazing colleagues that I worked with, because I had never worked in an events business of that sort, of that magnitude. So it's
Yes.
quite something to watch them take that on. Yeah.
No, absolutely. It was an amazing networking opportunity as well for you to be at the forefront of building something, especially for the Canadian market. We didn't really have anything of that size.
That's right. Yeah, Razor started Elevate when we didn't have Collision, we didn't have
Right.
we had Discovery X, but it was still very much research and university focused, Discovery X, and less startup focused before. I mean, early days, but Elevate really came and filled that gap, right? Yeah.
Mhm. So, how long were you there for, and what happened after that? Because at some point you started thinking about building your own
Uh,
accelerator.
that's right. Well, Brampton Venture Zone. So 2020, if you remember, what happened in 2020?
I
COVID.
don't know.
COVID
Yeah.
happened. So COVID happened to me as well. And I always think, my God, I mean, it's either bad luck or it's just meant to be that I chose events and a food business, food tech business. Like no one is going to go for any home social dining anytime soon, because people were scared out of their mind, getting sick from this bug that they didn't know what was going on with it. And events, I mean, it was extremely difficult time for Razor, because Razor is an amazing salesperson. He worked 8 months in advance, 9 months in advance, in securing partners, and people were just unsure of what was going to happen to the world, right? So he had to make the difficult decision of letting people go. And as a chief of staff, I mean, I can no longer be there as a result either. So the organization shrunk to a few people very quickly. And so I was out of a job. To be honest with you, I was out of a job at that time, but I had to really think hard. So any entrepreneur, thinking of building anything, anything can happen at any time, right? You could be in a market that is completely not possible. And I mean, look at the current tariffs and how many startups might be affected by that, right?
Absolutely.
So anything can happen in the world at any time. As an entrepreneur, as a woman entrepreneur, one of the things I learned the hard way, because I think we're going to be talking about good things and bad things, is
Mhm.
always make sure you have a diversified revenue source for you as a person. Extremely important if anyone is thinking about building a startup. And when I mean by that, maybe have a rental income, or have other investments, or other side hustles where that brings in money, a passive incomes. Whatever needs to happen, you need to make sure you do that. Not everything can be in one basket.
Mhm.
That is a dangerous thing for anyone to do, especially if you're thinking about an entrepreneur pathway. So I learned that the hard way, to be honest with you. And it woke me up to saying, you know what, you need to smarten up about if you ever do this again, you need to be smart about it. But also looking for how I ended up at TMU was I saw this ad for a new incubator, and I had always wanted to, after the experiences I've had at Mars, I thought, wouldn't it be so much fun to build a brand new incubator, especially in a community that I can relate to, because I'm South Asian myself and came to Canada in 97. And I thought, wouldn't that be amazing if I had the opportunity to build a brand new incubator? And at that time, altitude was not there in Mississauga. You came,
Mhm.
I think, later. I think you were still, sorry, you were not in Brampton, I should say. You were in Mississauga still.
That's right.
And having the opportunity to build a new incubator focused on technology startups would be such a great opportunity. So I was lucky enough to get that and built Brampton Venture Zone for 5 years, which was such a great experience.
How different was that experience for you than Mars? Like, what was your vision at the time to build a new accelerator? Like, what did you want to accomplish there that you felt maybe there was a gap in some of the other
Yeah.
accelerators that you were with?
Thank you for asking that question, because, to be honest, working at Mars and then interacting with other regional innovation centers, everyone is trying their best to bring the best to our entrepreneurs. But I definitely saw gaps in the different models. So, and it was in the middle of the pandemic, I should remind you, that as I built the program. So obviously we didn't have this magnificent building like Mars. We had a tiny little
Mhm.
office in One Nelson in Brampton, and nobody was coming there. It was all meant to be built virtually. However, the thing that I always say to any incubator is, you have to be honest and true to the community that you're building the incubator in. What is the need of that community, right? Often there have been communities, not just in Ontario, but across across Canada, sometimes smaller communities. They take a page from another community's, kind of positive outcomes, and say, I'm going to be the fintech capital, with no financial institutions to speak of in their community, or and completely ignoring their natural resources in their community. So I'm giving that harsh example because that's what I didn't want to do in Brampton. I literally, the first day I got my offer letter, I spent an entire day driving around Brampton, going crisscross across. Brampton is like this broad city.
Mhm.
I drove back and forth around different neighborhoods to just familiarize myself. What does this community look like? I come here to eat, I leave. I don't actually spend as much time. So if I'm going to work here, I need to understand what this community is all about. And that really gave me the idea of an understanding of, oh my God, the sectors in this city are enormous. People don't realize the logistics hub, the manufacturing, the food processing, all of the amazing businesses that are here. They don't know, nobody knows that this exists. And so if I was going to build an incubator and attract entrepreneurs to do something here, I need to serve the community, which is the industries. So I very strategically, I created something called the Problem Lab, where we would engage the private sector. And during COVID, they were all willing to give the 3-4 hours. I was surprised. They were with us 3-4 hours, spend time with us talking about, you know what? Yes, we all talked about the pandemic because that was front and center for every sector. But we also talked about what's actually happening within their own communities, what issues they were facing. Because I said, I am going to go solicit startups and entrepreneurs to come and solve problems. And I want to solve problems that is relevant to you, to the sectors that we have here, so that I'm giving back to the community. I'm not going to go and, randomly say, any entrepreneur who wants to do something, come and build a solution here. So that targeted approach allowed me to then attract very specific startups, allowed me to say no to some startups who were not clear about what problem they were solving. And then that enabled us to have this very concentrated set of startups that built healthcare solutions or solutions for the logistics space or the food sustainability space. So that's the disconnect even Mars had, in all honesty, that our venture services didn't work with our corporate engagement team as closely as it should have, right? Because we were approaching it. Imagine a scenario where startups are just doing a demo day with the corporate, with absolutely no understanding of what the needs of the corporate are.
Absolutely.
Other than the name sector, fintech, something to do with fintech, something to do with healthcare, but not really knowing what they needed. That's where that formula wasn't working. And I was trying to fix that. And that's what I tried to do in the 5 years.
Did you, when you were traveling around Brampton, what was the entrepreneurship community? What did it look like? Like, was it bustling? Because at the time as well, you're building a new accelerator, and the biggest gap, I think, from what I've seen, was access. So if there are a lot of entrepreneurs that lived further north in the city, getting to Mars or getting to DMZ was problematic.
That's correct.
Was there enough of a startup community in and around Brampton to make this viable?
Yeah. So excellent question, to be honest. So, 10 years a Martian working in Mars, I can still say it did still feel like an ivory tower, right? Mars is, felt elite. It didn't feel approachable. And that's something I wanted to change. And for all practical purposes, Brampton was a new emerging entrepreneurship ecosystem, right? And kudos to the city of Brampton, who really tested themselves. They said, I want to create, and to the mayor, and we want to create an innovation ecosystem. And how can we make that happen? So even Brampton Entrepreneurship Center, which is their SBEC, was created to test that. They had hackathons. They tried to attract the students from Algoma and Sheridan. They said, what can we do to infuse a little bit of innovation ecosystem here? And then they very systematically then brought Brampton Venture Zone. They brought Altitude Accelerator. Then they created Beehive for international startups. That model, whenever I repeat it anywhere else in the world of economic development, I'm a part of International Economic Development Council as well. When I repeat that, they're like, that's exactly what we need to try. We need to try something. We can't suddenly set up an incubator and say, where are the entrepreneurs? Little by little, add to it and invest to create a momentum of no wrong door. Whatever type of entrepreneur you are trying to build a Main Street business, technology business, international, whatever sector you're in, come here. And then that grew, right? So initially, I will be honest, when we first went out to find startups to work with Brampton Venture Zone, they were coming from outside of Brampton. They were not from Brampton, because we didn't have that maturity of entrepreneurs that had grown to that level, right? They were still early. So we used to actually run 2 programs, an early stage program for ideation businesses, and then a later stage when you already have an MVP. But over the 5-year period, we had more and more Brampton-based entrepreneurs that showed up because they heard about us. They understood what it meant to work with an incubator, because that not all entrepreneurs choose to work with an incubator. They don't even know it exists, they're head down trying to solve something and trying to raise money. They don't know there are grants available. They don't know that people could help you with certain phases of your business, right? It's not known in a lot of times. So it's only over a period of time that momentum built. And I think half of the entrepreneurs right now in BVZ are from Brampton. They have some connection to Brampton.
Are there any stories of some of the startups that you've met during at Brampton Venture Zone that stood out to you in terms of how they emerged or how successful they became during the time that they were at your accelerator?
Yeah, so there's quite a few, but I think the one that comes to mind that has almost series, I think they have into Series A funding even, is MedAssist. MedAssist was actually founded by a pharmacist and a business co-founder. Eventually, the business person became the CEO, and the pharmacist wanted to continue to practice as a pharmacist, so he became the CTO. But Michael and his co-founder, oh my God, her name went out of my head now, but they basically were converting, this is during COVID time, especially converting the pharmacy into a place of healthcare services, which is, the independent pharmacies have so much capability. They could do so much more as an independent pharmacy, and they were giving them the tools to enable that to happen. And they've raised money. We introduced them to one of their first customers, LMC Healthcare, which is in Brampton, and then they've they onboarded over, I think they have, I don't know, thousands of pharmacies across Canada as their clients, and they're doing really well. That's one. They've had some other ones like Teanomics, which is not from Brampton, but they are entrepreneurs from London, MD, PhDs. I mean, majority of the health entrepreneurs we had, I was just blown away by their background. They were registered nurses or pharmacists or doctors or MD, PhDs, like people from the profession who said, you know what, I don't want to keep seeing this problem area over and over again. I want to build something. Alerka is another one who's a registered nurse from Brampton, a black entrepreneur who, he admittedly say the same. He made some mistakes entrepreneurs always make, grow too fast. And then, you realize, okay, you know what, I need to shrink before I can figure out things. So that's all kinds of journeys have happened with the entrepreneurs in our cohort. But yeah, some amazing impact. I think of the 43 that we graduated, 38 of them are still alive. 43 in the 5-year period that we graduated, and 38 of them are still alive and organically growing or have had investment.
So in the time that you were there, you said 5 years? Was it 5 years? Yes. How would you evaluate yourself in terms of where it started and what it is today and the impact that you've made on many of these founders?
Well, number one, I've renewed it for another 5 years. So the city clearly liked what we did. So the current founder is continuing to do that work. For me, the impact has been to create something from nothing, right? When we first started, there was nothing. And now then, as a result of the activities that we've had, between the work of us, and it's not just my work. I mean, I would say Altitude's work or Beehive's work. We put Brampton on the map. People kind of recognize, I have been hearing about all this amazing activity in Brampton, right? And I at that time strategically became a member of Brampton Board of Trade to increase the awareness levels of SMEs that we were engaging with about startup activity that was happening in the Brampton community. So I feel like that 5 years I spent, the impact that I have made is engaging with the private sector to let them know there's something called Brampton Innovation District and Brampton Venture Zone, bringing startup activity. And we've had great interactions with Dynacare and Medtronic and many other healthcare companies and logistics companies and so on in the community. We also brought our first tech event to Brampton Venture Expo. As you know, it grew from 100 to over 1,700 people. That is an impact that I think I believe I created. It's happening again on September 11th this coming year. So that's another, the people were like, what is happening in Brampton? We have this event, our mini Elevate event. So I hope that all of those little things, that seeds that I put in over the 5 years are going to continue to grow, and brings attention to the work that Brampton has done.
I think it already has. And I can attest to the fact that there are people coming out of the GTA, out of Toronto, to see what's happening there, because we're starting to specialize in things like space and healthcare and all those things, and clean tech. And the fact that the community is tight, the fact that there is, what do they call it? Is it co-opetition, collaboration?
Yeah.
Regardless, there's enough resources there that can help a lot of founders.
That's correct.
So I want to ask you about your transition, because you decided at that time, maybe it's time for me to take the leap and do my own thing. Can you tell me about how that started?
Yeah. So while at BVZ, enjoying growing the community, and actually it's one of the events, the BVX Fest event that we ran. Last year was 1,700, the year before 1,000. 70% of the people that showed up to that event were not people interested in entrepreneurship. They were not looking to start a business. They were actually people looking for jobs. And Brampton being, the center, 1.5 million people in Peel region, right? And a high amount of immigration and highly qualified immigrants in business and tech. They were, frankly, the talent floor that we used to have. We had a startup zone, investor zone, and talent zone. The talent zone was the busiest with a maximum number of people.
Mm-hmm.
So my realization was, okay, I was an immigrant in 1997 to this country. I lived in the East Coast and the West Coast and Yukon to get my Canadian experience, to get a work experience in this country. That hasn't really changed much. We've actually had, unfortunately, some, immigration rules or quotas that we went by. They brought in 500,000 and 500,000 people into the country, but really not showing them the pathway of what jobs could happen from that. So I said, I went to my manager at BVZ, at TMU, and said, I want to solve for this problem. What can I do? I want to do something here in Brampton. And, he said, if you are able to raise funding for this initiative, I'm very supportive of you solving for this problem. And so that's how it happened. We applied for the SDF grant through Brampton Board of Trade, and a few other grants. And we started this journey in early, mid 2023. And that's how Be Ready Talent was born. So Be Ready Talent essentially solves for helping newcomers and the underinvested communities. It could be even newly graduated students, helping them find meaningful employment, but employment with specifically SMEs and startups. I realized very quickly, speaking to talent, that they are applying, if you're new to the country or you're a fresh graduate. Number one, you don't have the network, right? You're new. Unless your parents are well connected, you don't have the network. Then second is you're applying for jobs that are obvious, like meaning up through LinkedIn, big brands that you recognize. That's where you're applying. Guess what? Thousands of other people are applying. You're in Toronto, for God's sakes. You're in Ontario, right? In Southern Ontario. So there's a lot of competition. So what they were ignoring or not aware of is the SMEs and the startups opportunities. Especially in, there's over 200,000 small, medium enterprises in Peel region. In all those sectors that I mentioned, biotech, manufacturing, food processing, logistics. But people have biases about SMEs. Small, medium enterprise means different things in different countries. If I went to a person from Africa or India and said SME, they would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Are we talking about a mom and pop shop? Like, I don't want to work there, So they don't realize there are $20 million companies with 200 people or 100 people that are growing and making a big difference, and they need talent too. So that was the story on the talent side. On the SME side, because I'm on the board for Brampton Board of Trade, I was hearing that we can find IT or simple, roles that we're trying to fill, which was kind of frustrating. These two people that need to meet each other were passing each other. And when you speak to startups and SMEs, they often their story is, well, I have to pay $150 per day on LinkedIn to post my ad. If I just put it on there, I'm not going to get good candidates. And even if I do, there's like 500 applicants, and probably most of them are not a good fit. And who has time to look at 500 resumes? I don't even have an HR person. So how are we going to solve for that? So I was thinking, how can I solve for both of these issues on the talent side and the SME and startup side? And this is how Be Ready was born. So it's both program and a platform that's an AI tool that helps SMEs to search the database to find the talent. So it's a talent bank, not a job board. And the amazing thing is the startup that built it for me was actually a one from Beehive. So it's a kind of a good news story for all of Brampton in the sense that 316.ai is actually a startup from a startup visa program in Beehive, and they helped build the solution for me. And as I was doing this work, 5 years of one, I get antsy and I want to build something new. And I truly care about Be Ready. And I had requested TMU if there's a possibility of spinning it out. And so grateful that they were okay with that, because they were not going to continue the work without my leadership there. And so I had the opportunity to spin it out as an independent not-for-profit. And that's what I've been.
That's great.
As of April, running that.
That's amazing. But you understand, like, with the new government installed, I mean, I think there's been a lot of influence from south of the border as well, especially when it comes to DEI and whether or not that's even relevant or even prioritized right now.
Yeah.
How does that affect your approach to developing your own startup and this movement in general? What do you think?
That's a good question. So, in fact, I don't use the word BIPoC on my website. So, and I am all for people hiring people for their skills, not because they're BIPoC. Very important.
Yes.
No BIPoC person wants to be hired because they're a quota. They're a number. No one wants that. In fact, I've been hearing from startups, individuals that are looking for different language skills. So diversity of language is actually becoming higher as a request on our platform, because we have people from all across the world speaking abilities in Arabic to Tamil to Persian, to all kinds of languages are represented on our platform. So it's really not a DEI hire. These are highly qualified individuals who have multi-language capabilities, who could potentially help you go into other markets. Literally. So in my mind, the way that I'm talking about it is this is just great talent that is looking for opportunities, whether it's a first experience or pivoting in their careers, give it a chance. And the pain point really is about cost of employment. Do you have $1,000 to pay $10,000? Sorry, not thousand. $10,000 to pay to LinkedIn recruiter as a startup or as an SME? No, you don't. Right. So for them, it's like, what's the harm? Try this platform to see if you can find. And we have about 45 people that have been hired from the numbers are as of today, 1,208 talent are on the platform, about 141 employers, and 45 people have been hired so far in the past year. So, and we're growing. And it's just a matter of time when people realize, okay, you know what? SMEs especially is saying, I need younger talent to increase productivity in my company. I don't even know how to think about AI tools or how to improve productivity in my small business. I need younger talent to come in and show me some things. That could be the angle. Or they're going into new markets and they want to tap into a talent that's come from another country. It doesn't matter, whatever the needs are. Yeah. There's different people on the platform to help them.
It's I think the harder conversation to have is with companies who want to vet, the list of people who are coming in and many times there is an ideal candidate, and sometimes that ideal candidate looks a certain way. Do you think there is, like, have you run into some of those challenges with SMEs who have maybe a bias towards what they think an ideal candidate would look like?
Mm-hmm. To be honest with you, the of the employers that are on the platform, the ones that are open to trying it are less about the ideal candidate and less and that typically enters in when there's an HR person. When there's an HR person, nothing about it, nothing wrong with HR people,
Mhm.
but they have a certain expectation of how the hiring process needs to happen. I'll give you an example of ClimateWorks, who was hired from the platform. ClimateWorks is a subsidiary of BNP Metals. The managing director and the operations lead were the ones who were hiring. They're a 100-people company, $10, $15 million company. They do cooling systems for servers, right? And they were looking for a particular profile of an individual that could be 3 different people. That's what they were looking for, but they were mishing it into one profile. And I said, I have no idea if we have that person on our platform. Let's have a look. Let's do a search. And lo and behold, they did find an individual, Faisal Mohammed, who had 15 years of experience in India. He came to TMU to do his MBA at Ted Rogers, and he was not looking for the ClimateWorks of the world. He was not. He was a business intelligence analyst. He was going to go to a bank, or he was going to apply to tech companies. He was not applying to ClimateWorks. If they had not found him, and he interviewed with them, and he's been there for 1.5 years now. And I spoke to him just a month ago, and he's so happy in his role. He said, I get to do so many things. I don't think I would have ever had this opportunity to try so many different things as an individual, and the trust level. And this employer, I mean, the thing is, this employer is embracing a diverse set of talent in their organization. With diversity, you bring, it doesn't matter what kind of diversity, whether it's age or gender or ability or ethnicity, it doesn't matter. Diversity in general strengthens your company. And if a company understands that, they're going to be more successful, right? If the more number of individuals that you bring in. So he brought in all kinds of background and expertise from working in other countries. He's worked in 3 other countries before he got here. That added value to them because they sell into those countries indirectly, right? So yeah. I think people who understand that will succeed. I am not going to try, and my job is not to convince people to do things that they're convinced to do, but that is also means that they're not willing to change.
Yeah, right? I think there is enough data, I think, out there that proves your point. There is, I mean, diversity in general, diversity of thought, diversity of, just trying to avoid the chances of groupthink gets people to think outside of the box, and actually do better. So I think it's just a matter of trying to bring that out as an outcome, as opposed to another token hire. And that's unfortunately the thing that comes to the forefront when it comes to diversity, right? So
and that hasn't been the conversation, in all honesty. That hasn't been the conversation. Has been about do you need to save funding before, do you need to hire fast? Do you need to be in control over the search of the candidate who's ready to work and who has a diverse set of background? It's been that the first part is about saving money more than anything else. Because they don't want to waste, and time. Who has time to look through 500 resumes?
No, exactly. Well, maybe you have an alternative model now that the monsters of the world and the LinkedIns of the world don't, right? So kudos to you for pursuing, for getting into a market that seems like it's crowded. So I wanted to ask you about, being an entrepreneur. There's many people that won't even dive into this side of life because there is so much uncertainty.
Hmm.
What would you say, I guess, based on your own values, what you've learned, your philosophies, about what's guided you throughout all this uncertainty?
Yeah. You know, to be honest with you, if you're initially thinking about entrepreneurship, I mean, hands down, you know, people who go into entrepreneurship is because the freedom. You have the freedom to make your own decisions. Yes, you'll have shareholders. I mean, if you're a private sector business, or you have board of directors if you're a not-for-profit, but to be able to define the strategy and solve a problem and be the, you know, it'll keep your intellectual property of building your own business and have control over what you're building. That's the freedom, is what attracts entrepreneurs to that. But I always felt if you don't want to jump into entrepreneurship right away, having side hustles, we talked about some of the side hustles, I would have never learned the types of technology that I had to learn, because when these side hustles required me to learn them. I don't think on my own I would have learned those things. And you know, I don't have to tell this to the audience that you have. You know, if you are not keeping up with the changes that are going on right now, reducing the time that it takes to do anything, to write copyright, to make design, to do anything in the SEO, automation, whatever it is, there's technology for every single thing, right? And I am running majority of my things through technology, and I have no staff. I have one fractional marketing person, but I get everything done because I use a lot of technology. And that's the beauty of now being an entrepreneur. If you have a side hustle, you're going to be forced to learn some of these things and to be more successful if you fully go into entrepreneurship on your own. So I think the benefit is there's nothing lost, and I'm dedicated to being a lifelong learner. So if you love learning new things, then you should go into it. I mean, it really does take a mindset, growth mindset, and there's it doesn't matter what age you are. I mean, there are people who are 65 who've gone into entrepreneurship for the first time, because they have always done that in other ways throughout their life. So it's a choice. It's a choice. You know, do it if you enjoy that type of lifestyle, right?
So last question. So you spent much of your life building programs for entrepreneurs. How do you yourself design your own support system? Are you actually part of an accelerator?
I'm not. I'm not. You know, so I've thought long and hard about. I'm members of 8 different chambers of commerce. I've become members of organizations where I think I can benefit, I can get value. I'm not. I don't think. I mean, if you're new into a community, if you know, new coming into the community or an entrepreneur, yes, absolutely, you could benefit from being a part of an incubator. You know, there are the one thing that I would say for anyone who is running an incubator is you really, really have to work hard at the pace at which you do things for entrepreneurs. They don't have time. Don't waste their time. If they need something at 8 o'clock at night, they need it at 8 o'clock at night. I'm so sorry to say, it's a 24-hour business, right? If you're running an incubator and it's a 9 to 5, you have to think hard about how, if there's a you know, hair on fire moment for an entrepreneur and they need your support, you better be there. And so a lot of times entrepreneurs are part of multiple organizations for that reason. They say, what can I get from here? What can I get from the other? I can get money from here. I can get a free something from here. I can get better mentors from here. That's why they join multiple organizations, but it's exhausting for them, right? So anyone building programs for entrepreneurs, just be mindful that this is their life. You know, they have no money. They may be foregoing some serious things, dental work or other things, because they don't have money to pay for it, because they're bootstrapped. They don't have funding. So if you tell them, I can meet with you next month, that's just way too late for anything, right? So the timeliness of how we work with entrepreneurs is extremely important, which is why I chose to become an entrepreneur eventually after I left Mars, because I felt like a fake. And like, I don't know what this feels like. I don't know. I haven't put my own money in. How can I advise entrepreneurs when I haven't done it myself? Right. So this is my choice. That's my choice, that I wanted to be in their shoes. And now I feel like I understand them better because I have been one. I can empathize and see where their needs are. Even today, a lot of my ex BVZ entrepreneurs still contact me for different things because they know that maybe I can connect them somewhere that they see that I'm connected in LinkedIn somewhere. But that's what they need. They need you to unconditionally give. Unfortunately, for them to grow. And I have not become a member of any group for the moment as a not-for-profit. So I'm still holding pattern.
Yes. Good for you. I think you're learning the lessons of a bootstrapped entrepreneur and knowing that, at some point to be investor ready means critical negotiations and how much are you willing to give up, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'm going to hold it there. I think that's amazing advice. And thank you for giving advice to us as an accelerator as well, because you're absolutely right. Nothing revolves around the accelerator. Everything revolves around the entrepreneur. And so we have to be able to give them that level of support. I mean, that's why we're here, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I look forward to seeing your progress.
Thank you so much, Essie. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to Altitude Accelerator as well for the opportunity to tell my story, and hopefully it resonates with whoever is listening to it.
Absolutely. Lots of, I would say, words of wisdom, and your experience has been amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
For our audience, if you have topics you want us to explore, please email us at communications@altitudeaccelerator.ca. Tech Uncensored is powered and produced by Altitude Accelerator. We're hosted on Spotify, and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. So until next time, this is Tech Uncensored. I'm Hessie Jones. Please stay curious and be inspired.